Ethan McCall stood at the edge of the lake, the wind nudging the surface into quiet ripples. The reflection of the setting sun spread like fire across the water, but he barely noticed. He held a flat stone between his fingers, turned it twice, and skimmed it across the surface. It danced once, twice, then sank. Just like that. He exhaled and sat down on the old wooden bench behind him. The bench was carved with initials, his and hers, from 2 summers ago. Back when everything still felt whole. Back when he thought love alone was enough to make a woman stay. But that illusion had shattered one Thursday evening, 2 months ago. Natalie had stood in the doorway with her coat already on. Her bag slung across her shoulder like it belonged to someone else. Her eyes didn't look at him like they used to. "I'm not happy anymore," she'd said. "I need something stronger than this. Someone stronger." She hadn't cried. And maybe that was what crushed him most, how little emotion she showed walking away from a man who had once been her world. Or maybe he had never really been that. Maybe he was just a chapter she skipped through, hoping for more. Ethan didn't fight it. He just stood there, stunned, watching the woman he loved walk away. But the words she left behind echoed, louder than any slam of the front door. Someone stronger. It haunted him, not because he hadn't loved her, but because deep down, he knew she was right. Not strong in muscle or money, but strength of mind, of presence, of character. That night, Ethan sat alone in silence for hours. No TV, no phone. Just the still hum of a broken heart. But in that silence, something inside him cracked, not in weakness, but in awakening. He remembered a book his father once gave him after a tough breakup in college, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Back then, he had tossed it on a shelf and let it gather dust. But now, with nothing left to distract him, he picked it up. In those pages, he found words that hit harder than anything Natalie had said. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That single line became a spark. Over the following weeks, Ethan began dissecting his past, his choices, his habits, the way he had shown up in his relationship. And little by little, the picture became clearer. Natalie hadn't left because he lacked affection, or because he didn't care. She left because, in subtle ways, he had been betraying himself. And in doing so, he had lost her respect. He had become a weak man, not by accident, but by repetition. He saw it now. He had done 3 things over and over again, and each one chipped away at the man he used to be. The first was seeking validation instead of standing his ground. Ethan had spent too much time trying to please her, trying to read her moods, chasing her approval like a man begging for a trophy. He didn't lead, he reacted. When she complained about his job, he promised to look for something better. When she snapped at him, he apologized, sometimes without knowing what he was sorry for. Every argument ended with him retreating. Every decision bent toward her comfort. At first, she had appreciated it. But respect cannot grow in a man who constantly bends. She didn't want a mirror. She wanted a mountain, something steady, solid, something that remained itself even in storms. And he hadn't been that. The second mistake was ignoring his purpose to prioritize the relationship. Ethan had put everything on pause to make her feel like she was the center of his world. He stopped writing. Stopped hiking with his friends. Quit the Saturday volunteer work he loved. He told himself it was sacrifice. Commitment. Love. But she never asked him to give up those things, at least not directly. It was him, convincing himself that the more time he gave her, the more she would feel cherished. What he didn't realize was that she had fallen in love with the man before all that. The man with passion in his eyes. The man who woke up excited about things beyond her. When that man faded, so did her desire. It wasn't that she wanted less of him, it was that she wanted all of him, especially the parts that had nothing to do with her. Because that's where strength lives, in purpose, in self-direction, in the quiet fire of doing what matters, even when no one claps for you. The third and final mistake, the one that sealed the rest, was emotional inconsistency. Ethan remembered the times he'd spiraled. Not always loudly. Sometimes just small withdrawals, cold silences when things didn't go his way. Passive frustration when plans changed. The silent scorecard he kept in his head: who did more, who gave more, who said sorry first. She could feel it, even when he didn't say it. That unspoken resentment. That simmering disappointment. And over time, she began to walk on eggshells, just like he did. Their home became a place of hesitation, not warmth. A Stoic man isn't a man without emotion. He's a man who doesn't let emotions control him. And that wasn't who Ethan had been. He had been ruled by reactions, fear, and quiet insecurity, none of which could inspire love for long. Now, sitting on that bench, he realized how far he had drifted from himself. But with that realization came something else: clarity. Strength doesn't come from pretending to be hard. It comes from alignment. With your values. With your purpose. With your truth. And so, Ethan did the only thing a man can do when he's lost everything but himself: he started again. Not to get her back. Not to prove her wrong. But to become the kind of man who never needed validation to feel whole. He began waking up earlier, returning to his morning routines. Cold showers, a quiet walk before sunrise, a few pages of Stoic philosophy each day. He wrote in his journal. Not to wallow in regret, but to study his own thoughts, to know where he stood, where he faltered, where he was learning. He returned to the gym, not for abs or admiration, but for discipline. He called up his old hiking buddies and joined their weekend treks again. He felt the wind in the pines, the ache in his calves, and remembered what real freedom felt like. He volunteered again, tutoring high school kids at a community center in South Denver. Watching their faces light up when they solved a problem reminded him that service grounded him. He didn't date. Not because he was bitter, but because he wasn't ready to share his new foundation with someone else until it was solid. Months passed. And then one day, he saw Natalie again. By accident. A bookstore downtown. She was reaching for a copy of something, he couldn't remember what, and their eyes met. She smiled, surprised. "Ethan." He smiled back. "Hey, National." She blinked. "You look different." He just nodded. "I feel different." There was a pause. Not awkward. Just full of quiet things neither of them said. "You seem good," she said softly. "Stronger." He didn't ask what she meant. He didn't need to. After a few minutes, she had to go. They said their goodbyes. No promises. No hints of unfinished business. As she walked away, Ethan felt a quiet sense of closure, not because he wanted her back, but because he had finally come back to himself.